Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first panel of the first ever College Improv Conference. Subject for this panel is Building Your Improv Team, Auditions and Casting. Be sure to watch more panels. A link will be placed in the chat to the overall schedule. But today at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Connor Ratliff of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and Dead Eyes fame will be hosting a panel on the organizational design of college improv teams. The link to watch this is the same as this one. Don't tell anyone. Without further ado, I turn today's panel over to our moderator, founder and CEO of Improductions, a man who's been improvising for over 20 years, Nelson Velazquez. I am concerned. There he is, and off we go.
Thanks, Jerry. Thanks for the introduction. Hello, everybody. My name is Nelson Velazquez. He, him are my pronouns. I appreciate you being here. We're going to be talking about casting and improv today. And we've got three panelists that I'm really, really stoked about seeing. So I'm going to ask my panelists to all turn on their cameras. We have Tate, we have Skylar, and Harrison here. Give them a virtual round of applause either in the chat or just at your home. That's great at this point. So we're going to go around, introduce ourselves. Let's get your name, your pronouns, and where you are hailing from, and then we'll get the discussion started.
I'll start off. I'm Harrison Wright, he, they pronouns from James Madison University, and my troup's new and improv.
Hey y'all, I'm Tate. I am a rising junior hailing from Greenville, South Carolina, and Furman University, pardon me. And my troupe is called Improbable Cause.
Hi, everyone.
He, him.
Hi, I'm Skylar Bachisin. I use she, her pronouns. I'm from Stonybrook University in Long Island, New York. And my troupe's name is Somebody's Uncle Improv.
Got him.
All right. With that said, I put myself on mute. Now we're good. With that said, we're going to be talking about casting and improv. So I'm going to start with you, Harrison. What is something that you feel is really important about why we do the casting that we do? What are some of the needs that you see from an improv perspective and keeping the group going? What are some of the needs that you have for auditions or casting your group? What are the catalysts out there?
Some of the biggest things I think when just looking for anyone to join, even just a team, is how they're working with the other people, and that's especially big in improv when a lot of your stuff, you're relying on other people. So if like you see someone who isn't listening to other people or isn't really getting what's going on or isn't following or just, is causing like conflict in a scene that isn't moving it forward, then you can tell it's like, okay, this person maybe isn't have their improv skills to the point where they can work as a troupe on this team. So I think it's like, can they fit? Can they work together? And does their improv like fit with, what the troupe is, I think.
Cool. What do you take, Skylar? Like, what are some of the catalysts that you have when it comes to your auditions? Like, why are you holding auditions in the first place?
I mean, obviously, grow the troupe. Yeah, you don't want to die. You don't want to kill your own troupe. You definitely want to find in audition people who are like ambitious and they have some care for the troupe. And I think longevity is something we should be thinking about a lot too. It's maintaining your troupe's energy. Auditions really shouldn't be just to, obviously be able to find somebody else, but they're also to really enhance your troupe. You want to become better every single year. So we're looking for usually.
I think that Tate and Harrison covered it pretty well. One of the biggest things for us is group chemistry during auditions. So just seeing how we're able to interact with each other. And other than that, I would say like different perspectives, because people who are into different backgrounds, like have different knowledge bases, bring different things to an improv scene. So for example, we had someone in our troupe that was very into history and would bring out these wacky like historical references and historical characters that none of us have ever seen before. And it was just something new and unique that I thought brought a lot to the troupe.
Okay. So when you're running your auditions and you're trying to find these kinds of characteristics, Skylar, how do you go about doing your audition? Like, give me like a day in the life of like what the ideal audition might look like so you can get those kinds of people in the group.
Yeah, so we start with 2 days of just open auditions. Whoever would like to come is able to, and they do a scene with one of our current troupe members, and then we hold a callback. So in order to get a callback, just one person from the troupe has to put their vote in, and then we hold 2 hour callbacks, which is kind of a mix of a callback and a rehearsal with the current troupe members. So we have them do scenes with each other, the auditioning members, and then also have them do scenes with our current troupe members, just looking for the chemistry between everyone. And we do a variety of games with different characters where you're playing a character, different like scene building activities, and just seeing what kind of skills they have.
Okay. What do you got, Tate? What do you got for me when it comes to how you run your auditions?
We are a fan of kind of throwing them into the mix immediately. So we tell them to bring their resumes, which does not matter, obviously. It does not matter at all. They walk in with their resumes and are like, okay, I have this. We immediately throw it away because we don't care about it. Just to kind of like get in their head. We tell them to walk in the room and sign in the funniest way possible. They have to walk in like some kind of odd fashion. I had somebody do a back handstand and like walk like that the entire way across. So
Wow.
just kind of immediately show off how creative can you be? You know, how stupid are you willing to look in front of us right now? And that is our first impression. And then immediately running through games, of course. We do the easiest games we can find. Ones that, again, as Skylar mentioned, they're going to show a lot of your skills and like how creative are you? You know, what can you actually grab from a random scene? And alternatively to how you run callbacks, we are a unanimous troupe. So every single member of the troupe must vote for you to be brought to callbacks, be on the troupe. So it's like you got to impress all of us. And I think that, in my opinion, it works best, but definitely a sillier form of auditions just to try and immediately launch them into our culture.
Yeah, do you find that silliness like helps like loosen them up before, with the audition?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, they're immediately scared because resume is terrifying for people, especially freshmen in college. But coming in and seeing us not care about it and be like, oh, they're casual. It's kind of a let up, if you will.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've been in that situation where like I'm a first year or second year improv practitioner, and like my only credit is my training, my training classes, and I'm freaking out about this audition because I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can look at my resume and it doesn't have anything on it, and you're like, here's the shredder, right? So I think that's a pretty cool thing. Like, do you use when it comes to that first like impression, is that like a good indicator of like if they come in with a really wacky character or they come in more serious? Like, do you use that to kind of filter the rest of the audition through, or is it just kind of like first impression and let's see where they take it?
I mean, psychologists say it best. First impressions matter a lot, and especially in improv. If you cannot immediately to a person you don't know be silly, it's not a great sign for you. That said, there are, other aspects. So I'm not like, that's not the entire decision, but it's definitely the main aspect where like, okay, can you immediately be funny? Yes, you can.
No pressure. No pressure. What about you? What about you, Harrison? Like, what's your MO?
Our troup's similar to what Tate described, where, so the format is we do 3 days. Is a 3-day process. The first day we have workshops. So anyone can come and we're not judging you. No one's getting judged on this day. You can come, have fun, learn the games we're gonna do tomorrow at auditions. And it's low stress. And even if you're not gonna audition, you can still come to workshops and just have fun. And I think it was a really good way for me, I know, because I was nervous. It's like, oh, what if what I think is funny isn't what they think is funny, and there's just a disconnect and I won't like this troupe. And I got there at workshops and I felt so like the stress just went away. It's like, oh, everyone plays the troupe who's in it as well as the new people. So I like the workshops, and then we do auditions. So that's also open. Anyone can come and do auditions. And we have like a form, and we make that silly. And like, like normal stuff like name, email, phone number, but then we ask like, which one of us do you think is the scariest right now? And they have to write it down and turn it into us. And I think that helps break the ice a little, which I think what Tate was saying, I think that is helpful to just be silly, And then the third day we do callbacks, and like Tate's, we also do unanimous. You have to be unanimously voted yes for a callback as well as on the troupe. And I like that in the sense that everyone's voice is heard equally no matter what. And you have to check in with everyone. And everyone, from what my experience in it, has been very respectful of other people's opinions. And it takes a while. It takes a long, like 7 a.m. We're like, okay, now we got it. Let's go tell them. I remember I didn't get told till 5 a.m.
What was that like? So you spent all this time like getting someone ready to audition. Now they did the audition. Like, do you do anything after the audition to be like, hey, we're still working on it? Or is it just like, let them sweat and let's see where they go?
It's a little less stressful from auditions to callbacks. You're like, you can pretty much tell who you want to see again, usually. That part's usually easier. But then everyone has their own opinions when it comes to who you're letting on. And especially with improv troops, I feel like the number, you don't want to get too big. You want to like fit what you think is best for your people. And everyone also has a different opinion on how many people to bring in. And so, but that's the part I love about it, is that everyone gets to talk that through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So from the perspective of like, during the auditions, like, what do you do to, again, like, we're looking for certain types, or do you purposely, is there like a stock set of games that you always play to see something, or is it kind of like based on the on the information that you get, that you kind of cater your audition process? Like, how do you figure out like the best way to bring out the qualities of that actor so that you can then determine if you are going to incorporate it into your group?
We have a system that changes like here and there, but it usually follows like, okay, let's do a warm-up, then let's do pairs, let's do a game with everyone, let's do a game. We have one that's it's one where you just have you can't talk and you only interact with like the scene. There's one we do monologues where they each have to just step up and just talk, and they're given no other instruction than that. And then we do it again, and we say, okay, now try to be like really, really funny. So we do one where, and the first time we tell them like, we're just like, like talk to us, do whatever you want. And then we give more direction the next time to see if giving them that direction leads. And there's a prompt that they all kind of like you're all in a classroom, be a character in the classroom, or you're all in a hospital, be one of those people and tell your monologue of what's going on. And so like solo and then pairs, and then you send some out and do, I think just like being able to test the whole range of what is required to be in like the scenes is just how we do it every time.
All right. And what else do something different?
We do also do, for callbacks, we would go all out kind of. Oh wait,
what does that mean? What does that mean? We go all out, like
it takes a long time. We do so much.
Is it a lot more games? Is it question answer? Like
all of the above. We do a lot more games. There's one section where we do an interview where it's the whole troupe, and you get taken into a room, and it's just you and the whole troupe, and you have to be this character the whole time while you're being like interrogated is the scene, and you have to stick with like in your character the whole time, and that's a really good test. Last time, and this was a little embarrassing, we did it outside because we had to like leave we used to do it in the library, but it was under construction. So we're outside and we're like screaming, and people are like walking by during people's callbacks, which I liked even more, because then that you could see if people were really committed and would just keep going despite random students just walking by looking at you, which I loved. Part of it was fun, but it's it takes a long time, but I think it's worth it to like see it all, because sometimes you never know what's gonna tip the balance. You'll be like, oh, I don't like, I love this person, I just didn't see them like do this, but then like, oh, maybe if you like, they'll show that at the end. It's always, I love like really deep diving into seeing what they all can do.
Right. Did the campus police ever get involved in any of these auditions? That's what I want to know.
Not yet. So fingers crossed that stays as it is.
Hey, Nelson, we have a question from the listening audience, if that's okay. I'll share it.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's right in there.
What negative characteristics of auditionees are disregarded because you can teach it? What negative characteristics of auditionees are deal breakers?
Great question.
Skylar, you look like you got something.
I would say like sometimes there's hesitation in like thinking, like trying to come up with the most creative response to a scene. I kind of disregard that because I feel like the more you do improv, the better you are on thinking on your feet and kind of like being able to come up with like these quick-witted responses. Something I do kind of take more seriously though is the ability to yes and. Like we teach the basics. Like I feel like after we kind of explain it to you, if you're still not able to take that into your soul, because that's like the basis of improv. It's like yes and is like the number one rule.
Right.
So we explain it to you and kind of like tell you a few different times, like, hey, just make sure you're yes anding and you're still not doing it, then I think they get the cut.
Wow. Okay. I love it.
I think personally, when I'm looking at auditions, somebody who's not funny will often be regarded like they're not being funny in this scene. Like people are like, oh, they're not improv material. I usually disagree with that. If they can improv like scenarios and still like add on to scenes a lot and be creative and necessarily not funny, that can still lead to a lot of comedy. So I kind of let that like we can work with that. So that usually in auditions I'm okay with. Callbacks, if they aren't getting more comfortable, it becomes more of a conversation to fight for it. I definitely do care about though is how they work with people. If you can't work with some other person very well, that's me. You're not for a troupe. If you're an independent actor, I've had them before in auditions. Great, fantastic. Go do improv somewhere else. You're not meant for a troupe. Or if you are, you should probably work on it a little bit.
What do you got, Harrison? What's a deal breaker for you?
If you yell in every scene, it's a chop. Like there's always one yeller. There's always one that every scene they're screaming. and I can't do it. For me, it's always like I know because like sometimes, you know, I think it's very important to show variety in auditions. And when you get zero variety, that's for me a red flag, because some people might have 3 jokes and they came to the audition and they're going to do what they like they don't have the ability, and you can tell when people are just like,
they don't have depth, right? Like there's no depth to what they have to present to you, right?
And I 100% agree. I think the biggest one is you need to be able to work with people, and when you see the people who aren't doing that, you know immediately. You like the whole point of this is a team, as a group. You have to work with other people. And one more I will say is sometimes like, and this just happens, people can like make a joke that's like, oh, maybe that joke's a little, oh, we shouldn't make that joke. And that happens. Like if that happens, like I've made a joke here or there that, oh, I shouldn't have said that. That happens with improv. But if you get someone in audition, you have to look out for red flags. Because I feel like that's like worst nightmare is like missing those, you know, is like someone who is like, you know, maybe not someone you want a part of your team and you're just being inappropriate. I think those are really important to snuff out immediately, because you just don't want anything like that on your team.
So speaking of red flags, so do you have a level set, or do you include any kind of level setting in the beginning of your audition process to be like, hey, here are the kinds of like here are things that we want you to stay away from, or that will knock you out of contention. Like, do you have that? Do you do that in your audition processes?
In the past, no. This time for sure.
Okay.
I think it's very important to just open with a conversation of, because some people, especially if they're auditioning, this might be their first time doing improv in college. In fact, I think that's usually the case.
Mm-hmm.
And so people might be coming from a high school improv background or coming from no improv background. So you got to be like, yes, you can curse, but you need to be respectful in use your common sense of what you should be you want. If someone quoted you, you need to be okay with them quoting with what you're saying. You need to hold yourself accountable. And I'll still make jokes, and I'll be like, oh, I need to, you made that joke. You need to be proud of the things you're saying, especially if you're going to be on a stage in front of people representing an organization. You need to be good to go and not a ticking time bomb.
Are there any other from Tate or Skylar? Are there any other things that you're like, no,
yeah,
we will
well,
just go
when
ahead.
Tate and Harrison were talking about being able to work with people, I have a little tangent to that. So we had a problem with someone who auditioned twice and got callbacks twice. However, they were constantly dominating every scene they were in. And it was really hard because they had a lot of talent. I feel like they had skills that we could build upon, but we constantly gave them notes of hey, just breathe a little in the scene, let the other person do some talking. It's a big teamwork dynamic between people in a scene. So if they can't again work with the other person, not only just being able to do a scene with another person, but kind of taking it over, that's a no for me.
Everyone's seen that at some point in their life. I have one more. People who have the same character in every scene. I had one guy who was always this noir detective, and it was hilarious. At the end of the auditions, we were talking about who we liked. I was like, I love this kid. And they were like, really? Because he was only the one character. And I was like, oh, wow. You're so right.
So you're the Michael Scott FBI agent guy. You'd love that bit.
I do think it's pretty funny. Yeah, but it's really dangerous when someone's only one character, and they're really funny with it. But if they can't change it all and the variety can't move, even when you give direction, it's not worth it.
Or if they're doing no character, that's equally as it's why are you doing it? It's you talk as yourself the whole time, and there's maybe one British accent.
Yeah, I think I know of a few people who are no character people. I think it's it's where you're at in your within the culture of your group, number one, but number two, of your ability to sell that, right? There is a person in Chicago. I would say they're improv famous, that I know of, and that person will be they'll go out on stage and cisgendered white male, and he'll stand there and he'll be given you're Oprah, and he'll just stand there and look and go, yep, I'm Oprah, and just keep improvising as himself. He'll include aspects of the character, but he won't change his mannerisms, won't change anything. You can make him the Queen of England. He's just plays himself. And it, like I said, it depends on the circumstance, but he's also where you're at as far as your ability to sell that capability. I think is also important, right? So interesting you brought that up. Characters are super important to your group. That's what it sounds like.
I think so.
And depth and range. Yeah. One thing I want to go back to, Tate, and you've all been touching it, which is talking about culture fit, right? So obviously you're doing your auditions and your casting based on their abilities to do these things. But talk to me about what, outside off stage, right? When you're not on stage, what's important to you as far as, people when they audition, how do you judge that part of it? Will they fit the culture of the group?
It's a really hard thing to talk about because culture is so non-tangible, I think, especially for us. For me, in our troupe, if I can't give this person a hug, or like I feel like I wouldn't be comfortable doing that, I don't really want them in the troupe. And that's not like a personal thing. It's kind of all of us agreeing with that, because comfortability in improv is kind of like hand in hand. You need that to be good at improv in a troupe. And if I can't be silly with you, and if I can't be myself with you, that's not going to work out very well. So our culture, in my own words, is incredibly goofy. We are goofy people in probable cause. And if you are like at all, maybe you have a bit of ego, or you can't get on our level, it's not going to work out. But again, I think every troupe should have different culture, or there's no variety in improv. So it's really, if one person doesn't fit in with our troupe, they could fit in somewhere else. But we are goofy, is what I describe us.
Okay, cool. And I guess when it comes to like culture, how like is it how important is it to the overall like audition process? So if I'm a goofy guy but I don't necessarily have the skill, like is it enough to get me into the group, or is it the skill is more important to you, or how do you balance, you know, that weight between skill and maybe culture?
I hear what you're saying. Okay, yeah. I would say it's probably more important to have the culture, but frankly, we have a lot of auditionees. I think a lot of people think they're funny, and that's great. I'm happy people are funny. It's finding the ones that fit the culture and fit the bill. Like they need to at least some of the skills to get into the troupe, and then also be able to, you know, give them a hug.
I don't remember when I auditioned for you.
Okay. Sorry, no way, Nelson.
Fair enough. Well, you, Skylar, like, how do you? What's your culture fit, and how do you weigh that against your skill set?
Okay, so I have to say that like maybe like 90% of our troupe is part of the LGBTQ community. We're like a very gay troupe, right? It's like whenever we have our rehearsals, we hang out, like a lot of just gay culture there. So if someone is uncomfortable being surrounded by that type of like environment, or like another issue we had one time was we had like a cisgendered straight man who was uncomfortable with the gay men flirting with him in a scene. Like if that's not okay for you, then that's not okay for us. So it's just not necessarily like we don't care about your culture as long as you accept people, but that's the biggest thing, is just being able to accept any culture or background someone comes from. It's not necessarily something we like pick out, like you said, like skill versus culture. I would say it is like more of a balance between both, like Tate was saying, because you can like teach improv, but at the same time, I feel like you have to have like a foundation set, and then you can build upon that.
What do you got for me, Harrison? What about you? What's the culture, your culture part of the audition? What does that look like for y'all?
I feel like I've grown in this topic in the sense that, like, I remember last year we were casting, and the captain at the time, like, he used the phrase when like casting someone approachable that you could grab a beer with, you know, like you hear that a lot. And I would roll my eyes when he said that. I'd be like, oh, that's stupid. Like, we should be just casting whoever the best one is what I just kept saying. It's like, if they're the best at improv, put them on the troupe. That's what I want. And I really was dying on that hill. But now I definitely get it more. It's really important to be not just good at improv, but fit in with the team. I used to really like, I didn't have to think about that too hard. I was just like, before I had to cast stuff, but then I was like, oh, that's like an important part of dynamics. And what's, I think, specific to like college improv and like other stuff like that, the troupe is constantly changing. Like the troupe now is not 2 years ago, you know?
Right.
Like 4 years ago, I might not feel comfortable in the troupe that I'm like named in, but no, like the people are always so different. Like I swear, like our group had some of like the first queer people. Like you could tell this troupe hadn't been touched by queer people before. When we got there, we're like, uh-oh, we should change some of like just like it was just better now that we have a more diverse troupe. And I mean
Mhm.
that in every sense. I like that we're all different majors. We're not really like theater kids. Not like some of us are, but like usually you see the improv from a theater background. But a lot of us are just kind of like bio majors and math. It's like it's a huge like difference. Like a lot of these people I probably would never have met if not for improv. And I'm really glad that it's so everyone's so different. A troupe of like 10 Harrisons would suck, you know. I no one wants to see that. It's the same joke every time, but I love that it's different perspectives and different people. And I think now I see the value of culture over just, you know, who made me laugh the hardest. So
All
I
right.
think it is really important.
Well, I'm going to cancel my Harrison Wright festival that I was going to hold. Now I have to cancel it. So
No,
there goes
it'd
that
be really
idea.
funny. It just wouldn't be like coherent. Like everyone would laugh and love it, but
Hey, Nelson, we have another question.
Yeah,
And
go ahead.
just mention to everyone who's listening, if you have a question, go ahead and message me. We'll get it in. Here's the question. At UCF Improv, we bring in alumni and local pros as outside judges for our house team. Do you have any thoughts on how to keep auditions unbiased? I asked a follow-up question. Is that the reason you include alumni and outside pros to avoid biases? And the answer was yes.
What's some thoughts on that?
I mean, I've definitely dealt with like a friend of mine auditioning, and that sucks. You know, it's like I have to like remove yourself a little bit. Like it was one of my best friends, who I think is hilarious, you know? And no matter what, I'm always gonna think that because I have that in my head going into this. So I do think it's helpful if you know your bias. I do think the outside experts is something that I've never had, or like alumni. I do think that would be helpful. But I do also I think I prefer to keep it in the people deciding who's going to be on theirs, but I do think I get why that's helpful. And I think when you do have those biases, I think it's good to, if you can just acknowledge them and step back a bit. And that's what I ended up doing when it's like my friend who I like a lot is auditioning. I was like, I'm not gonna like do a hard sell on this. I'm gonna let see what they think and support. I'm because I just know there's no way I can judge that fairly.
Mhm.
And so like that's the situation I think when I hear that. But in terms of other biases, I think when we have the unanimous rule, a lot of that is eliminated by it's hard for everyone to have this, you know, the same no one's gonna have like the same bias. So it's good to have that's why I think the unanimous thing is helpful in eliminating bias.
And Tate, I saw you nodding furiously.
Yeah.
Anything with a yes and on that?
Yes, and the unanimous thing is incredibly important to that. I mean, if one person has the bias, someone else is not going to share it. On that same topic, though, I honestly think that a bias towards personality is kind of a necessity in this kind of stuff. Bias towards, of course, anything else, more physical characteristics, is not fair, and that should be focused on. But towards personality, you want to have a troupe that at least has kind of a similar vibe to it. You don't want to
Mhm.
random mixtures in them. Don't poison the water hole. But it's definitely important for your troupe to do, in my opinion, school-sponsored trainings. We have a lot of DEI training at Furman, and so we are pretty much once a semester at some kind of training for diversity, equity, inclusion, which is usually enough to kind of identify what our biases might be, you know, train ourselves to be more aware of that, and then focus on that in our next auditions and really make sure, you know, we're hammering it out. We're not just sitting there and hating somebody because, you know.
Mhm. Well, so, Skylar, you touched on the LGBTQ aspect of your group. Are there any biases in that, either with that or anything else that you kind of keep an eye out for as well?
I don't think so. We've had like people from a wide array of backgrounds come audition, and we have a lot of wide array people in our troupe. It's not that we're looking only for gay people. That's just tends to be that more gay
Just to be what you get, right?
yeah, they just flock to us. I do think it's very interesting to include the alumni though in the audition process because like as Harrison touched on, like the troops we have are not the same troops that we've always had. like as an organization, like as you lose and gain new members, I feel like the troupe kind of like builds upon what's there and develops in a way. So to have the alumni there, I think is interesting because I feel like they are biased to cast what they know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I guess from that perspective, one thing that is interesting is, trying to balance your immediate need versus maybe your long-term need, right? From a casting perspective, does that factor anything? So let's say that you're part of the casting decisions when you're a freshman, right? Do you think about like, okay, what do I want to see maybe next semester or next year? Like, does that influence the way you cast as well? Or is it just kind of like, we're just looking at it for now and seeing where that takes us?
I don't think we necessarily look at like different skills for the future. We do look at like what year people are. So we do try to cast on the younger side to try to keep the longevity of people that are interested rather than go for the seniors every year. Yeah.
That's something that I hear from like I remember like back in high school when I was with like my friend and I were captains. It was just two of us casting this high school troupe. And he was really he would talk about we need freshmen. We need to put freshmen on the troupe. And I said, no, we don't. We don't need freshmen. You just want freshmen to like, make the troupe better long term. And he went, yeah, that's exactly what I want. And I do think that it is good for sure. Though I will admit I am still of the opinion that I don't care. Like I always ignore year. I still do. But I completely understand why. It is a good thing. But I don't do it in my mind. But I think it's still important to consider, but also I personally steer away from that. But I'm also glad my true members don't, so then I don't have to change my awful ways.
Yeah, well, at least it's not like it's a determining factor. We'll never say no to someone that's super talented, but they're graduating this year. It won't be like, no, we can't fit another person in this. Like we have like had someone for one semester and then we graduated just because they were really talented and we thought like, hey, we could use this for one semester. But it is just something we consider and kind of keep in the back of the mind. Or if we're like considering like saying no to, we have also said no to a freshman because we had like general meetings where we kind of teach the skills we're looking for. So we kind of like defer them, teach them a little more, and then encourage them to audition again and bring them back.
You let them cook. You cook them a little.
Yeah.
I did the same thing last year with a senior. He was one of the most talented improvers I've ever met. And he came in for one semester and graced us for one awesome semester. And it was the saddest thing to let him leave. But at the end of the day, it's fun. And that's what this is about. It was nice to have them on the troupe. And I was very thankful for them. But I want to touch with one thing. When looking at kind of long-term, in freshmen, the one thing I really want to see is commitment. Loyalty in a very corporate setting, obviously, is important. You want to be able to retain somebody for 4 years, and you also want them to be energetic and care about the troupe for all 4 of those years. If they're in the troupe and they go to the shows and they go to the practices and they're there, great, they're having a good time. But if they're there and they're present and they want leadership, they want to help the troupe, grow the troupe, that's when things get real for me, and I really enjoy that.
Cool. I think we're limited on a little bit of time here, but I do want to make sure we talk about this. So we've been talking about like lots of positive things that we're looking for, the culture fit, the things that we're, skills, those things of that nature. Inevitably, you will probably cast somebody that you thought was great, but maybe it doesn't work out, right? So talk to me about how you handle like, you thought one thing and then later on you've got to deal with that that subject of like, okay, they're not working out with this group? Like, how do you deal with it?
I'll admit it's interesting. So the way our troop works is once you're in, you're in, you know, like you made it, you're in it. And I remember when I was in high school, that wasn't the case. If you got in, you had to re-audition every year.
Mhm.
And I see pros and cons to both because the first one, the re-audition process, I think it's okay to keep in mind an improvist past performance when re-auditioning in that scenario. And that's the part that allowed for, let's say, there's someone that isn't that you thought was going to be good with the troupe and just isn't working anymore. If you do re-auditions, now you know, and you can then cut that person if that's the route you're trying to take. Um, but I think most colleges, they're not re-auditioning. That's a hassle for,
Mhm.
I wouldn't want to do that
So
now.
if you get if you get a bad apple in this bunch, that bad apple, you're kind of like, yeah, we're gonna make this work. That's
I
kind of
think
the way you're
I
set up
think you
now.
have to.
Yeah,
Yeah, you have to talk to them. You have to do your best. And like you just have to you have to confront them about it because I think most often the bad apple isn't like an evil bad apple. They're just
right.
not doing the things they're supposed to be doing. They're not, being
How about they're a
awfully
green
mean.
apple and a red apple batch?
Yeah, so maybe they just need more help or let's talk about this. I think just directly going to it is the way to go. I can speak for myself and say I've been the one to maybe talk behind people's back and be like, oh, maybe we should like, aren't they like awful? Because that's just a horrible habit of mine. But I think the way to do it is if you have that bad apple, talk to them. Because they don't want to be bad at improv. No one wants to be the bad apple. So I think just working together and confronting it head on is the way to go.
Okay.
Hey, Nelson, you're absolutely right. We are kind of bumping up against time, but we do have one question that sort of relates to what you're saying. It may be the sort of question where everyone says, I feel like I just answered this. So I have nothing else to say. And if that's the
Yeah.
case,
What do we got?
here's the question. Given that you only see the people who are auditioning over a few days, and obviously they're going to be putting forward their best face, their best foot forward, right? What do you do to sort of weed out the bad eggs that we're talking about right now once you have them on your team? But instead of that, look back into the audition process. What do you do to weed them out over those few days when they might be misrepresenting who they are?
I got one thing for that. So part of our audition process at Furman, we have them get lunch with a troop member. They have to get lunch with one troop member and then lunch with a group of members. So it's kind of just suss out their personality. And from that, we do see a lot of, is this person fit for our troop, which is, again, what I'm looking for in this person. But that is also more chances to even find a hint, as they mentioned previously, one of the red flags. And if we see that in the thing, and if we see that in lunches, we can kind of translate that to more of the improv side. Because again, personality matters too.
Cool.
Our group, we like I mentioned, do like general meetings. Anyone's welcome to come, and that's where we like teach our improv, right? So most of the people that audition, we already know because we put auditions like a few weeks into the semester, so we can kind of feel out who's auditioning, what we have. So for the most part, we already know most of the people. We do sometimes get a few where I call them random people that just show up and I'm like, I don't even know how you heard about this, probably from the flyers, but hey, welcome. So yes, they're the ones that, again, I don't want to call them bad apples because I don't think they're bad, but they're the little, I don't know, the worms in the apple that can sometimes cause an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we did have an issue where we had two members that came and auditioned together. Um, and they were the random people that just showed up and we were like, oh my God, we're so happy to see you here. And they were really talented. They were from India and had done improv together in India. And they came and auditioned together. and we were like blown away because it was probably like the highest improv we've seen out of someone just like randomly auditioning. It was great. They were really nice. They worked well with everyone, so we let them both in. But like after auditions and callbacks and we accepted them, they attended the first rehearsal and then just slowly stopped coming to everything. And it sucked because like we loved them, but the commitment, we try to like before like we let them in, we reiterate, we're like, hey, this is like a big commitment. We meet like for 4 hours of rehearsal a week. It's like a big thing. Like before you say yes, like we just need to make sure you're into this. And they're like, yeah, that's great. So we let them in, and then they just like slowly stopped coming. And it just kind of like broke us because we couldn't even get into contact with them anymore. We're like, hey guys, we have a show coming up. Like it's supposed to be like your big improv debut. What's going on? And they just like wouldn't answer. Or they would just like the right before a rehearsal, they would just be like, hey, it's like my mom's birthday, I'm in the city. And we're like that's fine. Like I don't want to say you can't see your mom for her birthday, but like we had this conversation, like if something comes up, please tell us like beforehand. So like we just
so you have these conversations with them as a result of like over time, like if you start seeing behavior, you're effectively confronting them on that, right? And calling, being like, hey, is this something you want to commit yourself to or not? And try to deal with that.
Try not to have like a confrontation, more of like a
discussion.
Like just checking in.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just degraded over time. Both of them, like they just ended up being like no call, no shows. So like I messaged them separately, like just like I basically gave them like, you can be in this if you're like willing, like show up to the next like 3 rehearsals and be in the show, or like you get the cut. I'm sorry. And then they both like kind of mutually decided like, sorry, like kind of bit off more than we could chew. We can't do this anymore. So
sometimes they're waiting for the line to be drawn.
Yeah,
they can.
It wasn't like it was a bad situation for both of us, I think, but yeah, they kind of mutually decided to leave.
All right, well, Harrison, I'm going to give you about 60 seconds, and we gotta transition out of here to let people get to their next things. What about you? Let's give 60 seconds.
Yeah, there's one part of callback specifically that, like, going back to like weeding them out before casting. Like, let's say, oh, like this person is having trouble working together. This person's having trouble because they're dominating all the scenes. This person's having trouble because they're too quiet. So we'll do like a break where all the people at callbacks will be like, all right, we're gonna discuss, then we'll pull you in, and then we'll bring them in 2 at a time and give individual notes in that moment of the things that we talked about, and we think this is what we think their weak point is. And so we say, we want to see more of this from you. And I think that's arguably the most important part of callbacks for me, is because that's when they're getting direct feedback of exactly what it is. Like we're avoiding them being bad apples right now. And so if after you get that note, you do the same exact thing, that's going to be, all right, that's not going to be it. But even if just following the notes really, really well will do like wonders. That's how you can really tell that someone is adaptable and can do it. And I think by giving direct feedback in the moment so you can decide, I think is helpful, I've found.
Nice. Well, I want to thank all 3 of you right now. Thank you so much for sharing your insight and the mechanics behind everything that you do with regards to casting and improvisation. I have been your moderator, Nelson Velazquez. I want to turn this back over to Terry. Thank you for watching.